Hello and welcome to the Lib Dem Podcast. Now, in an age of digital communication, is there still time? Is there still a need for paper focus leaflets? We all say yes, and we're going to explain why. Welcome to Focus Leaflets 101. Thank you very much for tuning in. My name is John Potter. I am the leader of the Preston Lib Dems. I'm also a campaigns and comms officer for the Association of Liberal Democrat Councillors and Campaigners. Well, that's a long sentence to have to get out. And we are going to talk all about focus leaflets today, because there has been debate online about whether they are still needed, whether it's old school, whether these tactics need to be thrown in the proverbial recycling bin. And we have two people to talk about this alongside me. We have Sam Al-Hamdani, who is an Oldham councillor, but also you work in Lisa Smart's parliamentary office, is that right?
Yes,
Well,
I do.
Candidate office.
Yes, and I'm a parliamentary candidate for Oldham Eastern Saddleworth as well.
Yeah. There we go.
Putting all the hats on.
Yes, absolutely. As many hats as you possibly can. And also, we have to have Sir Richard Kemp, because not only is he an absolute advocate of wonderful campaigning, but Richard, you will say to us that the focus leaflet was also started in Liverpool.
That's right. And in fact, until last May, I represented Church Ward, which was where it was first used, along with that Diet of Life, your Good Morning leaflet, first done in Church Ward. And I still represent 3/4 of my ward is still an area which 62 years ago first got that focus and first got that Good Morning. So a long pedigree. But I want to make it clear, I wasn't delivering it 62 years ago, just in case anyone was thinking I might have been.
So, what, you were shirking delivery rounds even then? That was it. That was it. That was impressive. No, but I mean, Sam, I suppose the question that most people want to ask, because we are in an age where lots of people think that you can campaign online, and that the old school leaflet format is very much old hat. I mean, is it still worthwhile doing focus leaflets, Sam?
And I say this as a digital advocate. I'm a big fan. It is absolutely essential, not just worthwhile. It is essential, because for so many people that are probably more likely to vote, they will access something that comes through their door, and they will not access something that is online. The number of people who will only get contact from you by a focus leaflet that goes through every door in your ward or in your constituency is so high and so worth doing. It's ridiculous.
Richard, you would echo that, I take it?
Well, I can't argue with that. I remember two conversations I've had recently. One is a fairly difficult part of my ward to get to, which I tend to deliver myself. And I was just thinking one day, I never see anyone here. And then I bumped into someone with his dog, and he said, "Oh, you're always round." And I deliver this on Sunday mornings. They're all having their breakfast with a cup of tea, and they see me through the window, and they like the fact that I'm out doing it. And that's true in so many ways. Another area, you're the only one we ever see. And most of the time it is seeing us deliver. Now, the fact is, we had a deliverer for that war, so I didn't deliver it very often, though I do always deliver every patch at least once a year, largely because people are ill or on holiday, but because I want to do it. And they see me. So in a way, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. The focus is important. The fact is, I'm seen on the streets outside election time, and you don't get that if you're a keyboard warrior. Do keyboard warrioring, if that's a word as well. But the most important thing is still what you put through the door and the effort you make to do it.
Yeah. And it's amazing how often people come up to you when you've been established. They'll say, "Oh, and actually, oh yeah, thank you very much for the leaflet." They probably couldn't even remember a single story that's in that leaflet, but actually they know that something's gone through that door. And I suppose it's almost, Sam, it's the opposite of what people think. In an age where we're getting less and less printed material, actually, does that mean your focus leaflet has a greater impact because people aren't getting 3 letters a day? And actually, one thing I do is I do quite a lot of delivery on a Sunday, because it's the only thing they'll get is generally is our focus leaflet.
Which is a really nice way of making that difference. I try and think a lot about what I can do with a focus that it makes it distinctive, that makes it different. Like we've just put one out now, and it says, and the main headline is "Ready for Christmas," and it's actually about the fact that we kind of planted Christmas trees that will live on for year after year after year, but they're getting it in January, and so it makes them go, "Oh, that's wrong," and then it's not, and it's all of those little things that you can do, whether it's kind of being the only one through the door at that time, sending a different message, being a different color to anything that they get, or a different, just whatever just makes it stand out. And with the lack of leaflets, I in my ward outside of election time, there has not been a single leaflet from another political party for about 7 years. So
Yeah.
you
So
stand out.
It's almost like a captured audience. Now, one thing we are going to caveat this slightly, because we are advocates for leaflets, and the way I've always thought of it is that a leaflet won't win you an election, but you're not going to win without them. And it's the kind of that sensible balance that you probably need to get this, because I mean, let's just face it. So only about 1 in 10 of your leaflets will be thoroughly read. That's where we get to. But that's not, like we said earlier, people see that focus leaflet dropping through that door. They see the flash of yellow, they see the Lib Dem symbol, and that just equates to them thinking, well, the Lib Dems are active here. And we see it, Richard, in by-election successes when we know we're going to have a tough fight. So I think of North Shropshire, where Helen Morgan won. One of the first things we did was really establish a strong printed material presence, so people knew it was going to be the Lib Dems and not Labour that were going to challenge the Tories there.
Yes, I can remember in 2011 in Liverpool, when only 2 of us held our seats, we gave away a ward because we had a councillor who refused to deliver focus. He got in when we were doing well, and he put one leaflet out with a big picture of him on the front saying, "A man for all seasons." And he lost badly. And these people say, "Oh, you can put out too much paper." You can't. If people don't like it, they just put it in the recycling bin. But I just want to respond to what Sam said about timing, going out when there's no one else doing things. So I never start putting my Christmas card, which is another thing to deliver locally, till about the 15th of December. And this year, I started my New Year focus on the 29th of December and had finished it by the time I went on holiday on the 5th of December. Now, that really is a time, particularly after Christmas, there's nothing going out. People are bored stiff. I would guess that is the most read focus that I put out all year, because everyone says, "Oh, we're having a marvellous holiday," but most people are actually bored and will actually read your leaflet.
Yeah, and I suppose that's just a slightly larger version of my doing it on a Sunday, because most people are chilled out on a Sunday, and actually getting a little bit of paper through the door is it's not going to beat watching the football or whatever else, but it's something where it's not just in the day-to-day grind of what they're going through. Now, I suppose, Sam, we should talk a little bit about designing of the leaflets and things like that. So there's all sorts of ways you can design leaflets. People I know have designed things on Word, or back in the day, I remember my old mentor Alan Hackett gave me a folder full of what used to be clip arts that they used to then place on a particular photocopy in certain ways to do it. Obviously, we've moved on from that now, but actually the party does have a good range of softwares for people to design. So whether you're doing a full color kind of a folded leaflet or on a riser or anything like that. So for the people who are on the podcast, you can't see that I'm actually just holding up various versions here, but whether that's a 2-color, whether it's A4, whether it's A3, designing it is a really key important part of it, and making it work from a content point of view.
It is really important. I think there are a lot of people out there who have no design background and just want to get the message out. So it's important to say, don't let designing it get in the way of getting something out. There are easy ways to do it. So if all you can do is put something into Word and that's all you can do, and there's no one else around with expertise, that is better than not putting out a leaflet. But so affinity. So I'm a professional graphic designer. Before I was a Lib Dem councillor, I was a journalist for 10 years. I was a graphic designer for about 20 years. Affinity Designer is a really great piece of kit, especially for the price. Like, I use that for professional design work, not just for Lib Dem work. And you can use it at a basic level, and most people can get through it. And the templates that you can get from ALDC make it pretty straightforward to just drop stuff in. Drop your text in and drop your pictures and do it as easily as you can. And before long, you'll get to be good enough to do a pretty good leaflet. You don't have to worry too much. And especially because, so when we talk about focus leaflets, what we kind of mean is those really local leaflets, like neighborhood news. It's really accessible. It's what's being done on your doorstep. Like, if it's too professional, it doesn't match the message. The message is we're your local people doing stuff locally for you. And so you want it to look all right, but actually it being, let's call it a bit homespun, actually works with that message.
And we look at Richard. I mean, we've seen designs. Liverpool has Lib Dems has got a good history of, or interesting history of coming up with alternative designs. But actually, one thing's that at the ALDC we do a leaflet of the week, and actually there is quite a lot of variation in what people. I mean, a shout out to the Gosport Lib Dems who do some absolutely old school, kind of bang flashes and things like that, which are very. And when I first saw them, I thought, oh my days. Like Sam, I do a lot of design work and I've been involved in the creative industries. And I thought, what are they doing? But then actually I thought about it. I said, I bet they go down really well with residents. I bet they're spotted so well. And that's key, isn't it, Richard? Because if it just looks like a glossy takeaway leaflet, then you're not going to get that cut through.
Absolutely. And I can remember, this must be 40 years ago, someone doing, when we were really inventing community politics, what do you like about the Liberals, as we were then? It was the leaflets that were coming through from their neighbours, not a flashy design from party headquarters or whatever. And so I agree with Sam, which is just as well, because I'm not a graphic designer. So I'm going to flash one of those. That's mine. Now, that is normally a colour one, but the colour printer had broken down. So I had to go back and produce it for our two-tone riser that was working. The most important thing is to get it out. You've got to be literate, can't be spattered with mistakes. There are basics you've got to do. But I would have had to wait till the end of January for our party headquarters to arrange for really professional ones to be done, like this. And you will see there's a certain similarity for those of you who are watching as to what John showed you before. But I wanted to get it out very early. So I just did it myself in Word. But the principles are the same. Focus, picture of the candidate, although it must be said that Rebecca is a lot more attractive than I am. Full of local news. This has no politics in. And normally it would have some politics. But it just so happened I was cramming it full of local stuff. So the politics went. So make sure that what you do is readable and decent and presentable. But if the alternative is waiting for someone else to do it at some time, just get the bloody thing printed and get it out.
I suppose that leads us quite nicely onto the debate about information versus style, and again, you see lots of, so I'm going to again hold up, apologies. So this is an A4, this was a special leaflet we did just about on a polling district. This was a polling district wide one. So didn't even go to a full one. So hyper local things just affecting this polling district. And you'll see there on each one of these, there's quite a few, obviously there are numerous photos on there, easy to read headlines. But I suppose, Sam, how do you get that balance right between information, because there's not masses of text on this, there's enough, but not masses, between information and making it look good? Because if it doesn't look good, no one's going to read it at all, is probably is the concern.
Yeah. I mean, the better it looks to some extent, then the more people will get into it. And really, I think the thing that we're all guilty of, and I've never been anywhere where this hasn't been an issue, is trying to put too much stuff into it. Like, that's the biggest issue. So probably get your stuff together that you want to put into the leaflet and cut it in half. And that probably gives you about the right amount of space for simple stories. Keep them shorter than you want to. Nice pictures, but not too many. Just don't put too much in, and that will get you what you need. The right amount of space for simple messages, simple stories. Like, people are not reading a focus leaflet or a keeping in touch or whatever your local version is to get kind of like the real depth of story that they might get elsewhere. This is about making local connections and getting stuff done. Like, a little bit of messaging in there is great, but anything more than that is probably too much.
It's almost like a trailer, kind of. You're not going to get, I mean, sometimes Richard held up something that looked a little bit more like a target letter or something like that, where you can go into slightly more depth, and maybe if it's a real issue that's had an effect in there. So just say Richard's done some work and it's about, say, a library closing in his ward or something like that. He would then follow. So the focus leaflet will have that as a story and will have a quote from Richard or something like that in it. But the target letter would then have greater depth, and then dealing solely with that issue, maybe only like the nearest streets to it. So again, a focus leaflet isn't on its own. You combine it with other things, whether that's a citywide tabloid or a direct mail or street letters, you're canvassing. These are all part of your arsenals that you need to use together. But Richard, I mean, one of the things that I suppose lots of people have at the moment, particularly because in the run-up to a general election, is that the Tory government and the Labour opposition nationally are giving us lots of things to have a go at them about. And I suppose it's not spreading yourself too thin and making just, like Sam said, you're not getting the whole story in here, but also you don't want just a series of bullet points or headlines, because no one then can buy into that.
Yeah, I want to just link in what you said first with what focus is for and how you go below it, and then how you go above it. So for those of you who can see this, we've got articles on back entries, basal growth on trees, the Penny Lane wombles, and pothole repairs. Now, each of those pictures actually tells a very localized story. So although I haven't put out a focus since the beginning of January, I've got 2,600, something like that, letterboxes in my ward. More than half of them have had a street letter, which also repeats that picture and talks about the problem in this street and this area which I'm addressing. But then above that, normally you'd go a bit further. Now, this has got a little bit, as their local council going to be Deputy Lord Mayor. I just thought I'd mention that. I will be Lord Mayor on the 15th of May. But usually there would be at least 2 articles which relate that to national politics. So it's, if I look at the work of the Penny Lane Wombles, who do lots of cleaning and recycling, we would have linked that normally with a recycling initiative, how the 9 of the 10 best councils are Lib Dem. We didn't in this, or I didn't in this, and it's not in Rebecca's either. But you then start to weave the national stuff in behind a story that they're interested in, because it's their street, their school, their pothole, whatever it is.
And I think using the right images to illustrate that, so having a picture of your councillors in your street, like that gives such a sense of connection, because you're right there, and it's much easier to get that across visually. So in a focus leaflet, like each store, you should have a nice big photo for your main story, and it'd be really like you want to cut. You try and not be on your own. Don't be Billy No Mates. If you can be with 2 or 3 other people, perfect. If there's just you on your own and you're working a place on your own, okay. But a couple of people is always better. Being recognizably in the place where your readers are, so they feel ownership of it. They take ownership almost of the news that you're giving out, because it's news about them and their place. Keep it simple. Just a nice photo that shows 2 people kind of a third of the way in, And then whatever the issue is on the other side of the photograph is perfect. Little bit of variation, sometimes have a landscape, sometimes have a portrait, but just keep it simple. Don't have a lot of clutter in the background, and sort of one good picture per story will do you a world of good.
And it's useful to remember that people buy into faces as well. So the reason why you'd have you might think, oh, I look stupid taking a selfie down the street, whatever, next to the local park. It's really important from an advertising and marketing point of view. People do buy into people. There's a natural engagement with other faces. So again, I'm going to hold up a leaflet here from Anscote here in Manchester. You see that almost perfect. I think so clearly who they are, engaging faces, shows where the locations of where they are, just ticks all those boxes and it is that almost that subconscious nature. Oh, those guys are in my patch. They're doing stuff in my area, and it's really, really powerful. I want to talk a little bit, Richard, about some of the other things we include in our focus leaflet. So one of them we'll talk about is I'm a huge advocate of testimonials, and you'll see this in a lot of leaflets that we're doing the designs for. And again, I'm holding this up. Having quotes from local residents in your area is really key, because, people might believe us saying that we're brilliant, but actually if you get other people to say you're brilliant, that generally has a stronger message. And even if they are Lib Dem members, distant relatives, as long as they don't have the same surname as you, they're generally really good to kind of buy into that particular story. I mean, do you agree with that, Richard?
Partly, but that
dear.
does explain why
I got a partly.
I can never get Erica to go on a leaflet with me saying nice things about me, because that would be so opposite a normal character. But the question of endorsement is good in a leaflet, but it's not the only way to get it. And so I'm always staggered when people on a nice sunny summer's morning say, I've managed to get 100 leaflets done in an hour. And I say, well, why didn't you take an hour and a half? Because that also gives the opportunity. I always say hello to everyone as I walk. Good morning. And probably 3 out of 10, then you engage in a little chat with. And those are the people that then talk to their neighbours about you. It's not only the ones that see you behind. So always, as you go up the drive, if you see them in the window, wave or say hello, because you get that sense of endorsement. But endorsement is absolutely vital. I would guess that in my ward, and I got 55% of the vote, probably only just over half of that really are committed Liberal Democrats. The rest vote for me because I'm Erica's husband, so the name transfers to me very well, but they vote for me as an individual. So if I am their friend, so I sit, as you will know, John, in my front room on the terrace street, which is quite busy. Woo! I wave to everyone. And then it's being that mate in the community. And that's reflected in the type of literature you do, but also the way you conduct yourself in and about the ward.
Yeah, and I suppose other things that we want to kind of bring on, as well as your stories, make sure you have contact details, really important. And I do remember very early on in my political career, I got my phone number wrong on a leaflet, and I had to ring a lady and just say, I'm really sorry, but 5,000 leaflets of your number have just gone out. And it was very good. I mean, we don't, so, and she found it very funny, and she didn't say she got any phone calls, so she was all right. But I suppose another thing to put out is call to action. And Sam, would you like to explain what a call to action is and why it's so important?
Well, we talked about how we were engaging with people. We want them to take ownership, and the call to action is that thing of you ideally want to finish everything with this is what you can do. So if it's we've just done the main story on ours last leaflet was about the Christmas trees that we were planting, and it's like, do you want to get involved in organising the Christmas lights for next year? Do you want to be part of that activity? Or if we're doing lots of road safety stuff at the moment, and it is, here is where you can respond. Here is where you can sign our petition to get your street made 20 miles an hour. Here is where you are part of this. And it's really important for growing that connection with people. It's also really important for, we've talked about how political you are. I think something that is key to being a Liberal Democrat, more so than in the other parties, although they would say they do this, is that sense of community, of making it possible for people to do things in their community. It's right at the heart. It's in the introduction to our constitution. It's right there, front and centre. And until I was a councillor, I didn't realise how important it was. And that thing of empowering the local community to do things, I think it is a key part of advertising yourself as a Liberal Democrat, as well as engaging with people, is getting them involved in doing things.
Absolutely. So next Thursday, I'm doing something that's a halfway stage to that. When you represent Penny Lane, the most famous lane in the world, you want to say something about that. So I'm trying to set up next week a Penny Lane partnership, which will have a summer festival, and we'll try some serious fundraising to take over a building that's actually part of the song Penny Lane. So my first approach is to businesses. I've got 10 businesses coming, the residents and amenity associations of the area. Let's not forget them, because them saying nice things about you in their Facebook page and Twitter pages is very important as well. And I actually discovered that across the road from me, I've known him for about 10 years, never known what he did. We have someone who's the major promoter of rappers all over the world, and he lives just opposite me. So he's working out how he can involve people. And my second stage, having got this going, is to establish an organisation which Richard Kemp won't be chairing or being secretary of, but someone there will. And then we'll be going out to the community saying, how are you going to contribute? What would you like to do? And so they're all proud of living in Penny Lane and being part of Penny Lane. And so let's give them that opportunity. Now, not everyone has a Penny Lane, but there are places in every single ward that people are proud of, or communities they're proud of, or buildings or groups that they want to promote. You help them do it rather than do it yourself.
And I suppose two of the other kind of most common ones we find on focus leaflets as well is, sign up here if you want to help the Lib Dems deliver leaflets. Really, really kind of important. You sign up if you're happy to put up a poster during election time, deliver leaflets, want to receive our emails. Again, Sam, we've talked about this on previous podcasts, how important email marketing is, but actually getting those emails, you need to find a way of doing it, and having that call to action on your leaflets is really important. And I suppose, again, leading into this, the kind of Richard's talked brilliantly about the community aspect of why you want people to get involved, but also from a political sense, and and we're here to win elections as well, is that data element of it. So if you have a petition or anything like that, that means you have more information about what matters to your constituents. So you, A, can help them, but B, you're far more likely to get elected. This is a win-win scenario. And so having good call to actions on your leaflets is really important. Now, I suppose, Sam, we should talk briefly about tone, about messaging, because some people, we've talked about, very much the standard focus leaflet is very much, here's what we're doing, isn't it wonderful? We are moving very quickly into an election period, either if you've got local elections in May or whenever the general election is called this year, of where tone can shift. But I suppose it's still vitally important that you seem to be what we almost cliche it, the community champion kind of message that we put on our leaflets.
Yeah, I think that being able to be consistent whilst moving through those stages is really important. And I think that's about knowing who you are as a person and a politician, and knowing what your key messages are. We sat down in ward by ward and went, okay, what campaigns are important to us? And so, what are the issues that are important to us? And why are they important? And having that kind of template at the start of this is what we're trying to achieve, this is what we're trying to do, then as you shift your messaging closer to an election, you've still got that. You're going to talk about the same things, maybe in a slightly different way, but you know what it is and why it is, and that gives you that ability to kind of become more direct and more election focused, but without losing, it's still you. It's still like having that sense of self and sense of community at the heart of it. Like if you know that, and that process of just writing all those things down at the start really familiarizes you with it, and then that will naturally come out in what you're doing. And so and I, at the start of a year, everything will be sort of longer and looser and more discussion based. And by the end of the year, it's like, we'll deliver bang, 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 vote for us. But it's still all the same thing.
But and repetition is really important, Richard, isn't it? I mean, we talk about, I can't remember the cliches. You have to hear something like, was it 14 times before, by the time actually anyone even starts to make notice of it. So what Sam's saying, starting off, but the messaging is consistent through, and you're getting it in a variety of different ways, whether that's street letters, canvassing, focus leaflets, but actually consistency of messaging is really important.
Well, and consistency of delivery. A consistent message that goes out twice a year isn't as good as an inconsistent message that goes out more regularly. In fact, you want consistency and regularity. If you watch the television or listen to the radio, you never hear one advert or two adverts for something. After a month, you're fed up of hearing about the biscuits or the chocolate or wherever it is. You repeat and you repeat and you repeat. But you do it, as Sam says, in different ways. So we can play recycling as a local issue for Penny Lane Wombles. In our newspaper, Liverpool, I can't remember what we call it now, Liverpool Community News, I think, we are much harder about it on Liverpool issues because we have a poor recycling rate. But when we go to the general election, we talk about the same issue, but we do it from the point of being, hopefully, in government, part of government or what have you. And that's a much harder, much bigger approach. But I would guess, and I don't know whether anyone's done any review of this, that parliamentary by-elections aside, because they're very, very special things, parliamentary by-elections, leaflets aren't as much value in many areas as the national campaign and what you can pick up from that. In local elections, local leaflets are absolutely vital. I'm not saying don't do them in general elections by any means. You wouldn't do, particularly if you're in a target seat. But for many of them, it's what Ed Davies says, what Daisy Cooper says, and there's some really great stuff being produced by our parliamentary teams at the moment. So that's when you move from focus to having a political leaflet, and you use the two things. There is a danger that you can damage the focus brand if you're too snarky in it.
Yeah. And okay, so that's really. Do you want to come back on that, Sam? I didn't know if you were.
Well, it was just because you mentioned before about using testimonials, and I am never snarky in a focus leaflet. And the one time when we'd have some really nasty far right people in our area, the one time we got snarky, the way we did it was by using somebody who was not a member of the party. It was a letter from one of the residents who, and to be fair, like he has now joined the party, but at the time he hadn't. He was just so fed up with what was happening in his area and what was being done. Like, they kept saying, we're the voice of the community. And he was like, not in my name. And actually that testimonial as the way of putting that point across was, I feel much better. It didn't feel like I was having a go at someone, and because I wasn't. It was genuinely someone from the community going, I'm not having this in my community.
Yeah, I suppose the one thing that is another good thing that focus leaflets can have is obviously graphical illustrations are very good. We've talked about photos, but visual things, and the most common one that's used in focus leaflets, especially as you start getting either the end of the year or in the run up to an election, is actually maps. Casework maps showing you, look at all this stuff that's been done all over. Again, very visual, because most people aren't going to study your leaflets in absolute minute detail, but what they do spot is headlines, graphics, and sub-headlines and captions are like right up there with what they see as well. So this is why when you're writing your leaflet, you think, okay, if you've got a picture next to the story, say on one of the leaflets I just showed you was about a new incinerator in Preston. You want that caption to encapsulate the entire story in the space of a sentence. So if the only thing they get is that, they've clocked basically the basic information you want to get out. Now, I suppose we're talking all about the design, why we do it. I suppose the big issue maybe now is getting it out. Honestly, because there's no good at you writing the perfect leaflet and it's sitting on your lounge floor at home. And so having a delivery network is really important. How you manage that delivery network in terms of your volunteers. I'm going to talk just briefly before I bring Richard in, because Richard's been doing this a very long time, is actually some areas do use Royal Mail to deliver leaflets, or you can have private companies do it. Now, Royal Mail is called their door-to-door thing, which is expensive, and does it by postcodes. But if you're in a very rural seat, you think, oh my word, it's going to take me 40 minutes to do 3 farmhouses. Royal Mail's postcode selection thing and part postcode selection is a really useful tool if you're in rural seats and you're not sure how you're going to get it. Now, when you get into more urban seats, like in Preston, the postcode boundaries do not match your ward boundaries. So it's not ideal unless you've got something that's going to go over a large area. But volunteers is always better, because they're also, if you've got a volunteer that's a member of that community and he's delivering, it's amazing how much that goodwill network kind of expands, doesn't it, Richard?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm very fortunate. Well, I'm not fortunate. I chose a ward very carefully, which I can walk across in 20 minutes, and in which we have 80% terraced houses and it's all flat. Sorry about that, Sam. I know that would make you jealous. So in theory, I have done this once. I checked how long it would take to deliver the ward, and I delivered the whole of my ward in 17 hours. But I've still got deliverers. Why? For the reasons you've just been talking about, John. They become your advocate. So you spend a bit of time when you drop the leaflets off. The big issue in this focus, Jill, is, and Jill, almost all my volunteers are also members of other networks, churches, Penny Lane Wombles, Allerton in Bloom, and they talk to the other networkers who then take your message out. You don't do it politically, but you don't need to, because in my community, if you vote, you probably know I'm a Liberal Democrat by now. So using volunteers is important. And even, we normally have, I think, 8 deliverers. One's died and one's moved. I'm going to see some people to bring it up to 8 again. Even then, I will still deliver the patch at least once a year. Or I'll go out with my litter picker and womble it to be seen and taught. It's actually very pleasant if the weather's not too bad, going out with your litter picker in your bag, high-vis jacket. I whistle very loudly so that everyone knows I'm there. But I do it because I want to. And it comes back to what Sam said. If you're a Liberal Democrat, you don't do this for political gain. You do it because it's part of your DNA. You are a community politician before you're a party politician.
Sam?
I found it really difficult getting deliverers when I started. I'm still not great at it. The first step is emotional blackmail. Like, ask your family and your friends and just go. And it's so the most effective thing I've ever done to get deliverers was fall when I was delivering during an election period and sprain my ankle really badly. And I just sent a thing out to everyone on our mailing list, and I just went, I cannot walk, and we're in an election period, and I'm scared I'm going to lose. Can you help me? And I got, I think, 8 deliverers from that message. Like, emotional blackmail's a really good thing. So
we just want to point out on behalf of the podcast, anyone that deliberately sprains their ankle, having listened to this, no compensation will be paid out by the Lib Dem Podcast.
They can say they sprained their ankle.
Yeah, that's right.
But then, as well, find somebody who is good at asking. Like, I am not great at asking. My ward colleague, Alicia, is brilliant. She just kind of comes back with, this person's just going to deliver this area. She's just really good at not having that barrier and just saying to somebody, oh, could you do that? And it works really well. I find it easiest when it's like I've done some really detailed casework for somebody and I've really helped them. And normally kind of towards the end of that, they'll kind of go, you've been such a help. Let me know if there's ever any, that's the phrase you're looking for. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help. Yes, there is. Put up a poster, deliver some leaflets. Yes,
absolutely.
now.
And it's like what you say, it's like a soft power. All these people will go off to their knitter natter or something like that, and we'll talk about it. But I mean, there are also little tips and tricks you can do. Is obviously like when you're designing your walk routes, or you've got someone in your local park designs your walk routes, make sure they make sense in terms of you're not like just doing one side of the road, because you're going to have to do the other side on the way back to your car anyway, or whatever. Just there are logical ways of making life easier for you. I will say I was going to start this episode because we were going to be joined by Hannah Kitchen on this episode, but her kids have been kicked out of school because of the bad weather up in Yorkshire. And so I was going to introduce her as the woman that showed me a good time with a wooden spatula. And it is always worth it. Basically, this sounds absolutely ridiculous, is getting a wooden spatula. And then what you do is you'll wrap your leaflet around it and then fire it through. It is really, it honestly, as a tip, it makes you so much quicker. It means you will not get dog bites.
Spatulas are for wimps, John.
Oh, here we go.
The odd bite never does you any harm in the long run.
Richard Six Fingers here is an advocate of it, but it's also, I find it really useful. But another thing that we've done as a local party, and I hate wearing rosettes. I feel like I'm a prized pig in the Royal Lancashire show. But what we've done locally is, again, people might not read your leaflet, but they appreciate the fact you're out and about delivering them. And so actually, again, I'm going to hold up for the audience that is watching on YouTube. Our local party, we got ourselves a whole load of branded bags, and some of us then put a rosette on the branded bag, so we don't wear it on our chest, but actually all they see is a flutter of yellow, and they see us delivering, and it just, again, cements that idea that in this area, it's the Lib Dems that are working. I mean, yeah, I mean, do you do anything like that, Richard? I mean, do you have any sort of last-minute tips?
Yeah, I've got a high-vis jacket, but if you're in loads of rows of terrace housing, going out at the right time and whistling actually works very well. But again, if you see someone going past, and bear in mind, in my ward, they could be from anywhere in the world sometimes if I'm on Penny Lane. So always say hello and always respond to them. Don't be shy. Most people are very friendly. Some people are very lonely. And one of the problems there is they might engage you too much. But that concept of high visibility is what gets you elected. Focus are one way, door knocking is another, street letters are another. Podcast. I do localized little snapshot videos for 2 minutes sometimes. They're dreadful, I know, John, but people like them. I mean, I haven't got a sellable face like you two have, which I was a bit worried about something you said before, but I just think they want to recognize me. It's the old bloke with the moustache, I think.
Absolutely. Play to your strengths. Sam, any final tips for our audience?
So I think one of the key things about a focus leaflet is it's all about that sense of connection, and watch out for you doing things. So we're all engaged in politics all the time, and there's so many things. Like John joked that he was going to have a buzzer for when I geeked out during this, and this is the opposite message. So don't do all the political in things. Like probably you might not be appropriate to use the name of your ward, because there's lots of wards that aren't the names of local places. Like in Stockport, there's Manor Ward, but there's no place called Manor. There's about 4 or 5 villages. So don't refer to the ward name, because people don't think of themselves as living in a ward. They think of themselves as living in a village. So all those things that like, watch out for your political in thinking, and don't put that into your leaflets. Talk about the villages. Talk about people, not voters. They're people. You know, all those just little things that help you to, like, don't put barriers in the way of making a connection. Make sure you speak directly to the people.
And if you can get someone famous to do a song about one of the streets in your ward, which you can then sing after 2 pints of beer, I would strongly recommend that as well. But Sam is right. I used to represent Churchward, and no one at all would say they live in Churchward. Now, almost all my constituents, residents, we call them that for this purpose, would say they live in or near Penny Lane. So it becomes different. That's their village now. It's Penny Lane.
And I suppose when we talked about this when we done messaging podcasts, it's about having someone who isn't in your Lib Dem bubble just talk about, okay, this is what we're going to talk about. And if they went, I don't really care, maybe just assess that. Maybe it's important to you, but it might not be important to like the everyday person that you're going to be delivering to. And I suppose a final tip from me is we've talked about different other leaflets as well. It is now quite common for some of the higher end, more organized kind of local parties to double drop so you're worried about, because let's face it, direct mail, so stuff with addresses generally gets read more than a focus leaflet. But that doesn't mean you don't do your focus leaflet. What you can do is do your focus leaflet and have a street letter that goes out with it or something like that. So you're getting, because again, time is a precious resource in this. You might not have time to do two whole lots of delivery routes, particularly in the run up to an election. So actually, can you do a double drop, a focus leaflet, and then a target letter to certain houses or to postal voters or something like that as a way of you getting more bang from your buck as well? But it is essential. I think we're gonna end this podcast by saying I think we all agree that a focus leaflet is a really valuable part to it. And also, this is going to sound a little bit controversial. Some of the people that are advocating for you to not do focus leaflets are people that just do not want to do the work. And it is really important. There are such things as lazy politicians and lazy Lib Dems who would rather go on Twitter, pick a fight, than actually do the community work that actually gets people elected. So do the work. Do remember, and if you need more advice on it, all of our social media are open to ask us questions or ask a question of the podcast at libdempod@gmail.com. We're more than happy to talk to you. Also, I'm going to do it because it's really so. But join organisations like the ALDC. They're really useful. We have all the templates you could possibly need, and we have free advice for councillors, whether that's the standing, designing leaflets, whatever. But no, thank you, Richard. Thank you, Sam, for that. We have got loads more episodes coming up because we know we're heading into a pretty busy year for politics, to put it mildly. So thank you, Sam. Thank you, Richard. We'll be back with more episodes very soon, and thank you very much for tuning in. Bye for now.